security and AI, right? Those two things are like hand in hand right now. And if you're not really on the edge of trying to figure out how to put both of those in place, you're going to be extinct in about, I'd say, 2 to 3 years.
We have been talking about cyber and cyber attacks and cybersecurity all day long, right? I had a couple of great sessions around the threats, what happens, how the threats are being picked up. And today, within the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to run through why you should invest, what you should do, what you could do, and we'll try to give some practical advice through our experts, right? If you have any questions in between, don't be afraid, you know, like sitting in the back of the room, right? Cyber threat is over, we're out of the elevator, nothing's gonna happen to you. Feel free to also come up and ask your questions or sit in the front rows. You're very brave, thank you very much for that. Good. Let's step into our topics, and let's start with the first very, very simple question from my side, right? What is the one single reason that you would name if an MSP should take cybersecurity seriously today? Maybe one or two statements, examples that you have. Whoever wants to go first. Sam, you're nodding.
Yeah, certainly. So, introduce myself. I'm Sam Woodcock. I work for 1111 Systems. We're really focused on recovery of organizations. So we're in that kind of field. Personally, we've seen kind of a 5x increase in the number of organizations being hit by cybersecurity incidents. So I think from our own data, we're seeing an increase in attacks. And I think if you look at the news every single week, every single day, you'll see cyber attacks happening to organizations. And I think that they're the proof points that you need, right? These things are happening. They're affecting organizations, both reputationally, monetarily. There are a variety of impacts on organizations. And just a personal example, I guess, from the UK side, we're seeing, obviously, recent news around Jaguar Land Rover. Yeah. They're losing £50 million a week, 1,000 cars a day, and our own government having to step in with £1.5 billion to help the downstream supply chain, which is directly impacted by this type of threat. So I think you can't kind of avoid the fact that these things are happening, and points to the need to have solutions in place.
Yeah, I think the point I would make recently is, so a couple weeks ago, I was actually in Barcelona proper, not an hour and a half outside Barcelona. But I was there for Canales event, and if anybody knows and been to Canales, there's a gentleman that speaks named Robin, right? And he's really intelligent, a lot of data when it surrounds MSP specifically. And the conversation he had was, for the first time ever, they're seeing insurance companies decline coverage because they're working with an MSP. So we've not seen that. Normally that's been our foot in the door. Normally it's like, we can lower your insurance rates, we can help you prepare for insurance audits, things of that nature. Now all of a sudden the insurance companies are like, no, we see an MSP as a threat. And it's not necessarily that they see them as a threat, but what they're wanting to see is they're wanting to see the MSP carry the same level of security as they're putting on their clients. So I think that's where you got to start. Is I don't remember, was this panel we were having a conversation, but there's another conversation, was like, instead of eating your own dog food, you drink your own champagne. Did I get that from somebody from here?
Not from me.
No,
I'm the champagne guy.
But it's like the bubbles rise to the top. So in order to really be proficient at what you're doing, you got to drink your own champagne.
Yep. I mean, for us, especially working with Preempt and working before stuff happening, and seeing now from Sweden, seeing the biggest hit ever in Sweden, 1.9 million out of a 10 million country, 20% of all people in Sweden getting their social security numbers stolen and spread out across the dark web. So for us, it's working with that proactive work for the MSPs, having them be able to actually see their customer data out to dark web and warn their customers to help them really change those passwords, cancel those credit cards or the passports, whatever they need to do before anything happens. And that's where we try to help the MSPs really be that proactive force and help them with those products that they don't have today.
Do we think, maybe you can start with that question, Marcus, do we think that the MSP is kind of on the forefront of delivering that security to their clients, and that they should take this piece and run with it?
That's a bit of a difficult question to answer.
Oh, that's why I'm asking you.
When there are lots of them sat in the room. I got to be honest with you. I don't think they are, quite frankly. I think Leadership, thought leadership, a lot of it comes from the vendors.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the vendors do wrap it up in a lot of marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think quite often the MSP has a very difficult task because they have to interface between the end user customer who's got a specific set of requirements, they have a specific environment that they have to protect. They are looking to manage, they are looking to minimize risk. What the MSP doesn't do enough of, in my opinion, is consultancy. The MSP has an opportunity to differentiate itself using consultancy, doing risk analysis, analyzing what the vulnerabilities are, and analyzing also what the end user customer's appetite for risk is. I think the end user customer has now got a situation where we spoke, somebody said it a second ago, it is going to happen, something is going to happen. But not only that, the rise in compliance, regulatory compliance, is now actually forcing the end user to, whether it's going to happen or not, they've actually now got to elevate their levels of cybersecurity to a greater level. And that's only going to go one way. Here in Europe, we've got NIS2, we're on, it's been implemented at EU level, it's been implemented at each European individual country level. We're talking about iteration 1.1 of it. We'll find 1.3, 1.5.
Yep.
So I'm talking too much again, I know, and I can tell you.
You're all fine, you're all fine.
But yeah, I think, the MSP has got a difficult job. It's not an easy job. I've worked for MSPs, big MSPs, small MSPs. I don't envy their position. I don't think they're in a particularly nice position.
What would you tell an MSP if he's thinking about bumping up his cybersecurity practice, implementing more security into his services, looking at compliance rules and regulations to bump that up? Is that an advice you would give to a MSP?
I don't think it's an advice. I think it's a must. It's a have to, right?
Okay.
You can't, like one of the things you asked for was like big, bold statements, right? Well, my big, bold statement was there's no such thing as an MSSP. Why is that? Because we're in regulations, we're in compliance, there's checklists. There's no checklist for an MSSP. Now, on the other side of that, there's no checklist for an MSP either, right? So
Correct.
The point of it is when the MSSPs are security focused first. And I think, back to Marcus's point, that's where the vendors need to be, is an alignment. Like everything you're doing should be starting with security because you eventually do end up at compliance. But if you're not putting that baseline level of security in with everything that you do at the front of your thought pattern, then you're really doing a disservice to yourself, let alone your clients.
Mm-hmm.
I think one essential for me, and we've discussed this when we were talking about the panel session itself, is when you think about cybersecurity, we need to be thinking about the preventative aspects and having a full kind of suite, multi-layered approach for that. But oftentimes we're working specifically with organizations that have gaps in terms of the reactive elements. How do I actually recover if something happens? And I think that needs to be brought in line with the whole kind of ecosystem. It's not a case of just preventative or just recovery. You need that combination of both because we've seen the evidence that the attacks are rising, even though we have a lot of solutions in the market that help solve for the challenge. So you need to be prepared. You need to know how you're going to actually recover and to be confident around that recovery as well.
So it's the two aspects, right? Prevent, and then if it happens, because obviously it will happen to somebody in this room in the next 24 months, right? Then it's the question of recovery. What do you see on the side of prevention, right? And being aware of the cyber attacks, I think that's a field where you can speak about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, data is such a big part of it. Today in our database, we have close to 800 billion data points and credentials stolen across the web, across everything. And saving that data, helping MSP onboard new clients into that data and seeing exactly what data is out there, and then working with us for anything from phishing attempts, simulation attacks, and so on, to really help their end customers really understand what will happen. Why does it happen? Does the economy really understand that this is not the CEO emailing them, telling them, go here, add your credit card and pay this bill. We need to pay the supplier right away.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of them, 50% still click those links and enter those credit cards, even though we do simulation attacks.
Wow. Is that also a question of not only having the tools in place, but having your teams educated and continuing that all over the time?
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that we really work with and try to understand that don't just buy these subscriptions, also buy the e-learning and teach and educate your staff. It's such an important topic today because, I mean, social engineering is the main reason for getting hacked, right?
One point I was making, we were talking about the bold statements. One of the things that we were talking about before is that cyber resilience, you can get lots of different solutions, but that isn't delivering resilience. It's about the cultural aspect, right? Exactly. Building the culture is what enables you to use the tools to have a successful outcome. We were with an energy organization last week talking about the fact that they're spending a lot of time across the organization on that culture. Like, this is the reason we're putting this technology in place to help us to prevent this kind of incident from happening, and it takes everyone to deliver on that, so they're really important.
Let me ask a quick question to the audience. I mean, who thinks that cyber security and dealing with cyber threats is a priority in your business and your customers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
2 hands up here as well.
Don't be shy. 7, 8, okay. Now, leave your hands up, please. From these guys that have their hands raised, and you raised them double, that's good, right? Who of you have more than 30% of your revenue from security-related services? Wow, that's good. I was expecting nobody to raise the hand, so I think we got a very educated audience here, and very subtle MSPs, maybe they are
right.
MSPs, right, who focus on security. Now, what I've been talking about with a couple of MSPs in the past is, and let's look forward, right? If I invest with my company into cybersecurity software, education, implementing it, trying to sell it and to position it, right, that's going to cost a lot of money. And as an owner of a company, I want a return on invest, right? So if I do all these things, right, and fast forward, what do you think is the benefit for a MSP, for one of these guys that has invested in this, in the market? Is that going to be an advantage for them to play, or is it going to be a tick in the box and they're going to disappear if they don't do it?
I think it's definitely an advantage. I mean, if you're not doing security, because regardless, so I specifically work in both the US and the EMEA countries, right? So I can kind of compare the both. But what I can see is regulatory pushing down that they have to be more compliant. Now, for me, it's easy because my MSPs dealt in banks, right? So I would know if I went into a bank and said, hey, you need to do this, and they said no. In 6 months, I get it because the regulatory would make them do it. I think that's the same pressure we're seeing. I think we're seeing pressure on the MSP's clients and their partners, and I think we're going to be seeing more pressure on the MSPs, and I think we're going to be seeing more pressure on the vendors, right? Because we can't have, on the vendor side of it, we can't have the giant hacks. We can't have those breaches. So I think being part of that, security and AI, right? Those two things are like hand in hand right now. And if you're not really on the edge of trying to figure out how to put both of those in place, you're going to be extinct in about, I'd say, 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, just looking at the biggest advantage I see when talking to people is that we have so much preemptive, but the biggest concern I always get is, yeah, but it hasn't happened to me yet.
Yeah.
Always.
But that's like an insurance, right?
Exactly.
You buy it and hope you'll never need it, right?
Exactly, but they haven't gotten to that point yet with cybersecurity, because they have the insurance. Why would I need extra cybersecurity? If something happens, I have an insurance. Yeah, but how do you handle a ransomware attack when you can't access your customer data for a month? How are you going to do your customers? You're going to lose your customers, and then the insurance won't help you because you'll be bankrupt.
And we just had an example in another session where the data was encrypted. And they paid billions and billions over and over again, right? And it even went into personal threats to the CEO, who got text messages saying, we know where you live. They sent a picture of his daughter and all these type of things and said, look, if you don't pay, something's going to happen and this war is going to go into real life.
Yeah, so can I bite on that for just a minute?
Yep.
So what I love about what you said there is, like, there's a bunch of people on stage, and we're all obviously security focused, moving that direction. I think the problem that we're having in security, because I've only really been in the security world, moved over from everything else for a couple of years, really investing my time in it, looking at it. I think we have a business problem. I think we have a whole bunch of smart people that know to talk about zeros and ones, but we fail to translate that into business terminology. So in sales, the number one thing you're trying to do is sell value. That's it. If you don't see the value, you're not buying it, right? Now later on, you have to do ROI. I think what we're doing on the security side is we're failing to sell the value that they understand on the business conversation. The nerds and the geeks get it all day long, right? They love it. But the business people are the ones that are actually making the decisions, and they're not making the decision because they just don't see the value.
Yeah, exactly.
Marcus, your view on that, as especially looking for Spain and Portugal, right? Do you see a tendency of the MSPs to get certified, get audit, build these things into their offers in order to have better proposals?
Yeah, very much so. But a lot of them are doing it through obligation. They're not doing it to generate competitive advantage and to protect that competitive advantage, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think so. I'm now working for a vendor. And I've worked for other vendors as well. We have put our message together. We've delivered that message because we sell through the MSP. We sell to the channel.
Yeah.
The difficulty and the failings I think I've sometimes seen and I've sometimes felt really bad about are that there are tool sets, and I'm going to not say vendor, I'm going to say the MSP has tool sets. They can utilize tool sets. They can adopt them. They can put them into their services portfolio. They can put a whole wrap around them. The difficulty that they have is then translating that into an easily definable service that can be positioned to an end user customer. And I think quite often the conversation with the end user customer that the MSP has is a difficult one, and I think it's quite often badly positioned. It's driven by the end user customer. There's a CISO, and he's saying, I need this, I need that, I need this. I've got all these vulnerabilities. These are the areas that this is what my infrastructure looks like. This is how I need to protect it. I've already made the decision. Quite often, I think the MSP, the question that they should be asking, and based on relationship building and things like that, they should be in a position to ask it. And that is, what is your risk profile? Let me do an independent risk analysis. I remember sort of 20, 30 years ago, cybersecurity as a topic of conversation really wasn't on the table. These outsourcing deals that I used to sell, it was all about selling service desk. It was all about selling data center space. It was all about selling thin client devices, et cetera, SLAs, uptime. That conversation seems to have disappeared because the nature of what we're dealing with has changed, because we've now got cloud, we've now got AI, we've now got all these other things. So the conversation hasn't changed. We've not evolved. The MSP hasn't evolved enough in its dialogue with the end user customer. I know I'm sort of mixing in a lot of different ideas and concepts here, as I always do.
But what I see is, I think the topics you mentioned, SLAs and outcome, et cetera, I think that's now seen as a given. Right? If you don't have that, you're not going to play, right? And now cybersecurity is the next thing that they're demanding. Question for the audience again. Have you seen more tenders coming out where there are specific questions around your certifications, your countermeasures against cyber attacks? And have you seen those in tenders? Yes, no, maybe? No? 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 Well, so that means that with our clients, there's a knowledge gap and not the awareness that they need this stuff, right? Which makes selling pretty hard, right? Because you need to convince them that they have a problem to sell your solution, right? And that's kind of difficult because nobody's coming to you to say, oh yeah, we know we need to be compliant, we know we need to have these regulations in place. I think in just some industries like financials, you'll see it. On security, if you go into defense technologies and those kind of companies, you will be asked these questions, right? And if you don't have those regulations, if you don't comply, you're just not playing for the tender. Cool. Now, let's come to the hard part, right? This was easy till now, right? We started at the beginning to say, yep, we need to do something, and there's a necessity to act now. We said, yeah, if we get this done, whatever it means, then it is a competitive advantage, and we will survive the market. Now let's look at the part in between, right? How do we get there, and what do we do first in order to implement means to have cybersecurity in place, to have prevention in place? What do we do? Where do we start? Besides throwing money at it.
I think we're discussing, I guess, around the whole reduction of risk being kind of the business objective, right? We're all trying to reduce risk as a business and be kind of not suffer the attacks that we've seen. I think starting with the objective there, that North Star, and then aligning and understanding within the business, where do I have applications and data? What is critical for the business? Where is that located? We oftentimes spend a lot of time actually having a firmer understanding of where that kind of sprawl is, because we've gone away from that world of data centers and things like that to using cloud services, AI services, all those types of things. So the data and applications are spread across all sorts of locations. So for me, a starting point is to understand simply where that data is for your customers, and then aligning also and having that conversation across the business to understand what is critical, what is the most critical, and aligning the right cybersecurity solutions as well as cyber recovery solutions depending on that risk profile and that reduction of risk objective. Because in the ideal world, you would protect everything and you'd recover everything with the best possible solutions, but obviously budget comes into play, right? So you have to have that conversation around where's going to make the biggest impact. And that's where we often start from our side.
I think you got to start with yourself, right? Because the problem is you can't go sell something or you can't go provide a solution that you don't know where you're going to trip and fall. And the last thing you want to do is you want to do that in front of a client, right? So the idea behind, I think, what you're talking about is like, look, you need to do a self-assessment. You need to run through, so in my world, we call it a BIA, business impact analysis, right? So the problem with that is a lot of times, even on ourselves when we go to our clients and we start doing that BIA, we'll say, okay, let's talk about like the top 5 most important things. And often in that conversation, those tend to shuffle around. So in one person's mind, email's the most important. In another person's mind, the ticketing system is the most important. So you've got to align on that, and then once you align on what your real criticality pieces are, you need to understand what happens if it goes down and what's your appetite for the downtime for that to actually take place. And I think that's where you start with yourself, because what you're going to do is you're going to go through that process. You're going to experience the bumps. You're going to experience where the failures are, and you're like, oh man, we should have created the right policy on this, or the right processes or procedures, right? So then once you're done with that, now you can go to one of those super friendly clients that, quite honestly, love us and they're not going to leave us because we flub up a little bit, and they're going to allow us to refine what we're doing with them, right? So ourselves, the low-hanging fruit, and then you go bigger. And then but ourselves always first.
And especially when, going to meeting clients, of course, you're always going to have the CEO, the CTO, and someone else in that meeting, and they're going to say different things. What's the most important thing for you? So you need to be able to speak the language to each and every one of them. That gives you the advantage to actually be able to talk to them. Because if you're interested in the CTO, talking about security and what we can do and everything like that, but the CEO will care how much money will I lose if it happens. And if you can't explain that to him, you're never going to do the same. You're losing that client right away. Because the CTO is going to say, oh, this was the best thing ever. And the CEO is like, I didn't get anything of what you're talking about. We're never going with them.
Yeah, that's what, so years ago, I actually was an admin in a company that was giant US-wide company, huge SQL farms, right? And that ran our primary software. So when we started doing it on ourselves, everybody was like, this software we have to have. Like, we have to have that software. By the time we were done with that process, we realized that software, like the SQL farm, could go down for 3 days. But the key was, and I'm dating myself a little bit, was our Nextel communications, because that's how our clients communicated with us. And to put that in perspective, my Nextel bill was $75,000 a month. So when we realized that form of communication was more important than the software that ran the company, then we could start attacking what's the backup plan if, for whatever reason, Nextel goes down, like Sprint buys them and they can't integrate them in the product.
Okay. Can I just ask a question? Yes. Sorry. Based on 2 things that you both just said, question to you guys, and a question that I asked myself as well. Who's defining the strategy with the end user customer from a cybersecurity perspective? Is it the end user customer themselves, or where have you seen the MSP defining and driving the whole of that strategy? Because I remember 15, 20 years ago, it was the system integrator, it was the MSP that was telling the end user customer, you've got to look after this, you've got to do this, these are the sort of standards that we can adhere to, that you should be expecting. My perception from over the last 7, 8, maybe less years, is it's now the other way around. The MSP seems to have lost traction in terms of being definitive and decisive in terms of saying to an end user customer, this is what you need, this is how you minimize your risk. I mean, you mentioned business impact analysis. I mean, how long ago have I heard, sorry, I'm going off topic here. The last time I heard somebody talk about a business impact analysis assessment was a long, long time ago. Business risk analysis, a long, long time ago. I don't hear MSPs talking about it. I don't hear MSPs pitching it. And I don't hear MSPs putting them at the forefront of that idea to provide a consultative solution to the end user customer. It seems to be going away. Sorry, I'm just...
I think that's a very
I fully
interesting
believe it's
aspect.
because the MSP has lost the expertise,
Yep.
right? They're afraid of their clients, which I don't know why, right? If you're communicating with them regularly. But two, you were hired to be the expert, right? So when you allow that client to take over, right, that client doesn't have the objective view that you have, right? So it's really one of those things where you become somewhat of a mitigator or a counselor in the process, is you're supposed to sit in there and listen to them all, complain about this or complain about that or point this out. And then you as the MSP is the advisor, right? Not selling. Lord knows we all try to sell every time we get a chance, right? That is a huge crime that we could go down on the rabbit hole with. But I think the MSP, whether it's a CISO, whether it's a CIO, whether it's a CEO of the MSP, setting and being that moderator and leading them to the right answer, we've lost that, right? And now they're telling us, because we're afraid that if we say, you know what, that's not right, I think this is what the evidence is telling us, this is what the data tell us, they think they're going to fire us. They're not, because they're not going to fire their CFO for saying, no, you can't buy another machine. They're going to listen to them, and we've lost that relationship with them.
If I could just validate that really quickly, sitting as a vendor, the number of times that an MSP has come to me and said, the end user customer, their name is so-and-so, they want this, they want it to look like that, I need it as quickly as possible, can you give me a price, without any sort of technical conversation or engagement with the end user, and all of a sudden I've got one MSP doing it, and then I've got the next MSP doing it, and they all want the same damn thing. The requirement is driven and has come from the end user customer, and the MSP is just literally a step in between. That idea of them being a managed service provider where they're providing a value-add service seems to be sort of on the decline, in my opinion.
Okay.
We've lost the word why. Because I used to ask all the time. Clients would come to me and be like, I need a server. Why? I need this. Why? And it's like, so I'm an old child of Sandler sells. That's kind of where I learned my teeth on selling for. And there's a process called reversing. And reversing says if you reverse someone 3 times, you'll get to the truth. Right? So the question is, we're not asking why anymore. We just want to take that money, right? Because if we look at our overall market, 60% of MSPs worldwide make less than $1 million ARR. 70% of that make less than $500,000 ARR. They're struggling to be profitable in the first place. So when they get out of that and they actually start breaking through those glass ceilings that are natural at $1.5 million, $3 million, $5 million, $7.5 million, it's because they've started asking why, and they've stepped back into that advisor role, and they're not afraid of firing or losing a client.
I mean, wasn't that the strength, or shouldn't that be the strength of the MSP, that he is advising, that he is consulting, that he is questioning these things?
It's a strength because the MSP, in theory, is the person who is interfacing with so many different types of industries, so many types of customers, small, large, and middle. And that experience should help drive the right decision-making depending on the profile of the organization you're speaking to. So 100% from that side.
So would a starting point for an MSP who is serious about the security business be that he hires an expert that is up to date on security consulting and can ask the why questions and can go into depth before they just throw and implement software at the customer site?
I think the easiest thing you can do, and I mean, you guys would have to speak over here, right? Because you're a bit more experts in this particular region, and I can't put my finger on the exact thing. But in the U.S., I would just say take yourself through a Cyber Essentials, through CIS. Take yourself through a CIS self-evaluation, see where you line up, and once you're through that, trust me, most of us have 100 other MSP businesses that we know that we are friendly with. We can say, hey, could you come and take a look at this and see what you think so that I'm getting that unbiased opinion. But I think you've got to start somewhere, whether it's CIS, whether it's Cyber Essentials, NIST or DORA, GDPR. There's plenty of documentation out there that'll allow you to go through a self-assessment to get to a point where you're not having to pay a whole bunch of money. You're just asking someone to review your results.
I mean, for us, when we started out, we tried a bunch of different things, right? We tried, first of all, direct sales like through enterprise, MSPs and everything, channels. But what we noticed when we talk directly to the enterprise customers is yeah, have you looked at a product like this product suite? What are you doing here to protect themselves? And I always got back, no, I talked to my supplier, we don't need that. That was the end result that I got back. And I'm like, okay, then I need to go talk to the MSPs and say, why are you not doing anything like this? Because I got the names, and contacted them and said, no, we don't have that type of products in our suite. We only do computers, we do servers, we set up the website, and we do that, and we support this. But we don't have any cybersecurity products. And I said, why? And like, no, it hasn't happened to us yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair if the MSP says, look, I'm not in that space, I don't have the money to invest, right? Is an option for the MSP to go back to his client and say, look, I don't have that, I don't do that, but in my ecosystem, I have somebody that is specialized on that, and I trust these guys, and I would bring them in to jointly address that part. Is that a valid approach?
And that's what we did. That's what we did, and that's why we're partnering up with MSPs now, so we can go in as experts and help them out as well. But we saw so many cases that they don't even have a cybersecurity thinking in an MSP or a channel that they don't provide to their end users.
Yeah, we see the same from our side, which is that we ourselves have a strong focus on recovery. Yeah. But we don't necessarily have the full-on expertise from a cybersecurity side. So we work heavily with MSPs that have that cybersecurity knowledge, and that's their thing, and that they have that piece covered. But they will look towards who can help them with certain areas like the recovery element. So that, I think you're seeing that increase over time, but I think it needs to improve as well.
So like, Marcus, I'd be interested on your opinion on this because of the MSP background. So from my standpoint, I'm huge on ad hoc. A lot of people can't afford ad hoc services. Yep. A lot of people can't afford a project manager or a CFO or a CISO. Okay, great. You know someone that you can pay a minimum fee or partner with that will get you started in the right direction. You don't have to go out and pay full bore services to do this. Like, you can adjust that with a few hours here and there. Like, is that something that you've done at your MSPs, or you do now? What do you think of that?
Yeah, when I was working in the MSP world, that was literally a day-to-day occurrence. You know, getting a resource in for a week on, talking about day rates. Less prominent in Southern Europe, but certainly in the UK and in other territories where I've worked. And the type of resource has also changed as well. I remember sort of 10, 15 years ago, you used to be able to buy, on the whole, not regularly, but you used to be able to buy resources, for people like services architects. I've never heard of anybody wanting or needing a services architect for 10 years. I don't know any MSP. I don't know a huge amount anymore. I've actually removed myself a little bit from that part of the market because I'm working vendor land. But I don't know that many MSPs that actually have service architects. And I think it perhaps is an area, like you were saying, getting a specialist in for a number of days. The service architect used to look at all of the technologies or look at the requirements under risk assessment and BIA, and put together a service based on technologies. And one other thing I think is interesting to think about is that the role of the MSP is changing primarily because, first of all, the end user customer is defining what it is that they want and need. And us as vendors, we've all moved to this SaaS model. So it's making the MSP almost like a pass-through. And at the same time, the end user customer, when previously they would have wanted ad hoc resources to do project work, et cetera, everything now needs to be OpEx. They can't CapEx anything. You can't CapEx a project and make your own investments. The business doesn't want that. The business wants predictability. The business needs to see the profit and loss account have stability across the board. Therefore, they only want monthly costs, and they can only be small increments, and budgeted for. Every conversation that I'm having right now with some of my colleagues is, right, we don't know yet. We're putting the budgets together for 2026. Can you give me an indicative cost for this? Blah, 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 blah. So everybody's now planning for what they're going to get in the budgets for January, and they're trying to do. I'm going off topic again. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'll stop you if you're too far off. Don't worry.
That's kind of my experience. I know it's not, it's not pertinent to what I'm specifically doing right now, but my experience sort of has given me that view, and those are the observations that I can see.
But that's where we go back to that consulting rate, that consulting level, right? Because we used to set in on the OpEx conversations and be like, okay, so if we're comparing security and OpEx, we used to set in with operations and say, okay, where's your business going next year? Because in my world, as I budget, I have to put in where I'm hiring new employees. They have to do that too. And we're doing that so that they can line out that OpEx, right? So I think the problem with security is like, and I'm not pitching my software, but if you come and look at my software, basically what happens is it will show you this giant project. They can't consume that. But what you can do is say, here's how we do it in steps, because what you can consume is little bits at a time. And we're losing that consulting level where we're saying, let's just do this, let's just do that. If I, the whole nobody wants to buy a router on a Thursday for 10 grand. But if I can tell you a year from now, we need a budget for 10 grand, OpEx fits in perfectly, they're aware of it, there's no surprises. Security is the same way. We have to plan it out for them, we have to make it part of the OpEx so they understand where it's going to fall in and why it's critical for them.
Mm-hmm. Let me quickly come back and ask the audience again, get ready to show your hands, right? We talked about the ecosystem thought, right? And if you're not willing to invest or cannot invest or don't find the right people to get on board, right, you need an ecosystem and somebody you work with on a regular basis. Now, please show hands of you guys out there who work with other managed service providers on a regular basis at their client. Is that a trend? Are you doing that? I see one shy hand up here. Nobody else has an ecosystem where it says, look, we're partnering, we're doing things together. There's number 2. Wonderful, thank you. Same company. That doesn't count. So I've seen this from I come from a cloud service provider market, right? And the cloud services that are out there are huge, right? And there are specialists that do SAP hosting. There are others that give you the email infrastructure. There's others that give you the perfect marketing platform, etc., right? And what I see there in that market is that these CSPs cooperate, and they have built a network because they're fighting against the big guys like the AWSs, the Googles, the Azures. They can deliver everything, and the small guys are specialists in one area, and they start to pair up and build joint offers even to go jointly to the customer and say, look, this is how we deliver this. And you can choose who you want to have ruling the contract, and we'll sneak under, but we're delivering you the full portfolio with a brand of experts, which I think is a strong value proposition, right? If you can say, for a special topic, we have an expert who does nothing else but that, and we combine our forces, and we go to market together. So I think that's something to think about, and maybe use the time here to build your ecosystem and see if there are other companies that have niches or that are lacking capabilities that you provide, right?
There's another ecosystem that actually does that. So who here is a part of a peer group? Anybody a part of a peer group? So, okay, so that to me indicates a problem. Because I can be the smartest guy up here, but I still won't see certain pockets. Right. Whereas if these guys are my peer group, and I'm coming to them and I'm saying, here's what I'm seeing, they're going to poke holes in my theory. But the other part of the importance of a peer group is they're also going to escalate me as a business owner. They're going to escalate me as a business person. But what happens naturally in a peer group is we become friends. You guys almost become an ad hoc board to me, but the minute I'm in trouble and I need help, you're my immediate reach out.
Yeah.
So I always talk about the importance of peer groups because it grows us as individuals, it grows our companies, and it provides us a team when we need them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in the MSP industry, that's kind of not what we're doing. That's not how we're thinking.
No.
Right? We're trying to cover our customers instead of saying, look, I'm the specialist, I'll help you here, and I'll work with somebody else on this page.
See, and I think that's a difference between our regions because in the US, peer groups are massive. Like that's just where you start out. And it doesn't matter if you're a $100 million MSP or a $500,000 MSP. You need help. You need somebody else guiding you or at least giving you input. And in the US, peer groups are massive. I partake in one, and it's a week-long event, but it's so large that the hotels can only handle half of the group. So we have meetings on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday's a transition day, fly in, fly out. Thursday and Friday is the other part of the group, right? But these are massive things, and the reason why we're doing this is because there's power in numbers. And if this was a peer group, you guys are going to be giving me your expertise, and guess what? I'm not paying a dime other than my peer group fee. Right?
And you can't address that business anyway, right? So why ruin your customer by trying to do it and not doing it proper? but get in one of your peers to do it that you can trust, right?
Absolutely, because it's easy for me to say, oh, we need this. Somebody, I don't know a guy, but I know Marcus does. So let's set up with Marcus. But because Marcus and I have a relationship, I'm not worried about Marcus taking my business. And I think that's a lot of the reason why people don't partner with other MSPs is because they're afraid that that other MSP is going to take their business. And in peer groups, that doesn't happen because, one, there's an NDA, and two, it's a friendship.
Yeah, correctly.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of ecosystems, as you may have noticed, right? Let's come to an end, right? Now, let's make it very personal. What is your one advice you would give to the MSPs in this room that they can take away and start, not tomorrow, but on Monday, to put that into place? Marcus, you want to swing first?
Yeah. You were looking at me. I was expecting the questions to be to me, and I got it prepared in my head, but it's not quite there right now. What's the one? Yeah, no. I'm joking with you. Think differently. Try and do something differently. Take a risk. Take a risk with your customers. There's so much competition between MSPs that I think MSPs are so scared to lose their customers. Where you've got a strong relationship with a customer, be bold. Don't be scared. Don't be frightened. MSPs, I think, need to put themselves back in the forefront of the conversation with the end user customer, to be that trusted advisor, to tell them what they need to do, tell them how they're going to do it, and tell them that you're going to be there on the journey with them, etc., etc. The vendor that's behind it, the solution that's behind it, that doesn't matter. What matters is that the MSP is supported by, the end user is supported by the MSP that's in front of them, and it's going to be a journey. You're going to be loyal to them next year, the year after that, and they're going to respond with that loyalty as well. Don't be frightened.
Yeah, and for me, the takeaway is quite simple. Don't say it hasn't happened to me yet. Preempt, work more before it happens.
Proactive
Proactive work.
Think about these things,
really
be
focus on
proactive.
it. Really look what's out there. It's a lot of great services. There's a lot of great companies actually working on a proactive scale. Work with them, see who has the best in business. Take one product from one company, take another from another one, because then you get more expertise. So if anything happens, you can go to each and every different companies and get help. Because you will need that, because it will happen. It hasn't happened to you yet, but it will happen. Not today,
like
but
us getting stuck in the elevator, right? It may happen to you tomorrow.
I think sometimes by just looking at the sheer problem itself, you can almost be paralyzed to not take any action because it seems so big. And I think there was some conversation earlier around taking steps, because taking steps can increase your level of maturity towards the threats that we're seeing. So there'll be easy wins. There'll be things that can heavily reduce risk that maybe take less investment. And by taking kind of an analysis of what you have in place today, I think you can make those steps towards recovery. The other piece of advice I would say, just coming from a recovery side, is we see a lot of MSPs, but also a lot of end customers simply not testing or running simulations. And if we think about attacks that are happening today and that they're actually impacting organizations, I think having more of a proactive approach across the business to do testing, validation, and simulations you can become more confident to actually resolve those problems.
Yeah, mine's like 1%. 1% better tomorrow than you were today. And you do that in a way that's concise and it's methodical. You'll never be proactive. So you've got to start today. So you're saying Monday. I'm saying start today. Call your tier 3 and say, I need you to do this. Because you're all thinking about something that you want to start and you haven't started it. Guess what? 6 months from now, it won't be started again, right? Because you didn't do it. You have to methodically make time in your schedule, whether it's an hour a week, whether it's 3 hours a week, whatever it is, start today, make time, and execute, because that's the only way you ever get to proactive, and that's the only way you mature.
Yeah. And my advice, as you can imagine, is ecosystem, right? You have offers, you're great at one part, right? Make sure you have peers, peer groups, trusted MSPs that you can work with to cover your client holistically. Otherwise, somebody else will come and take away your client. So build your ecosystem, use the time, build trust with these guys, and then jointly deliver services to your customers. With that, let's have a big applause for Tim, Sam, Fredrik, and Marcus. Thank you very much for attending the session, and we're not going to take the elevator, we take the stairs. So thank you very much and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.